Omotenashi is a Japanese philosophy of putting the customer first. So now with Gen AI, you can create prompts and say, hey, for this kind of issue with the client, for this kind of contact type, please apologize with this kind of level.
That whole anticipatory sort of lens, I don't think it's necessarily that the West don't understand it. I think it's probably that they don't really prioritize it.
The project they have, it's quite interesting. They're doing a lot of research on how LLMs can train themselves alone.
This conversation is with Daniel Orenes Ferrández, who is the Senior Manager for Customer Experience at Uber. Daniel has a wealth of experience in AI and conversational AI. Prior to Uber, he was at Rakuten, where he was leading the conversational AI initiatives there. And really interestingly, he's been working in conversational AI in Japan. He's from Spain originally. He's been living in Japan for the last 12 years, and lots of his AI experience has come from working in Japan and with Japanese culture. So this episode is all about Omotenashi, which is the Japanese concept of customer centricity. A little bit different to how you might see that in the West. A lot of companies say they're customer centric, but this is real, true, cultural, embedded customer centricity. So what this conversation is about is how you can take the concept and the philosophy of Omotenashi and apply it in your work to create the best possible AI experiences. We also talk about if you are going to kind of deploy in Japan, what kind of things are important? How does the culture affect the way that you design experiences? How does the language affect what you do and how you communicate? And also, what role do mascots play? This is probably my favorite part of it all. This is a really, really great conversation. You're going to learn a hell of a lot here, as I did, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it very much. So without further ado, this is Daniel Orenes Ferrández from Uber. All right, Daniel, nice to see you again, my friend.
Nice to see you again, my friend.
How's things?
All good, all good.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm all good, thank you. Yeah. Edinburgh seems like a long way away now, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You're based not in, where are you based, Ken?
I'm based in Harrogate near Leeds. Yeah. So it was not too much of a journey for me in Edinburgh. So for those tuning in, we met in person properly, officially in Edinburgh at the EU Chatbot Summit, which was really good. And your role and your experience and what you're doing is all incredibly interesting. And the particular kind of point of that talk that you were giving in Edinburgh was I thought was really interesting. So I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of spend some time with you and learn a little bit about Omotenashi. We'll say we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a minute. But for those that don't know, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your kind of journey in AI. Where did it start? All that kind of stuff, and what you do now at Uber.
Yes. So I've been now in Japan for 12 years. I come originally from Spain, and I studied business management there. And then I lived in Edinburgh for 1 year. I moved to Dublin. I lived there for another year. But I was always interested in learning kanjis. Kanjis are the symbols of the Chinese language.
Right.
So I moved to China. And in Shanghai, I learned a little bit of Chinese. And from there, I got a job offer in Tokyo. Then from China, went to Tokyo, and I stayed there for 12 years until now. Then in Tokyo, I've been always living here and working here. I worked for 5 years for a Japanese company, IT company, doing business development, helping the company expand from Japan to Southeast Asia. So a lot of business trips to Thailand, to Bangkok, to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and around Asia. Then I always knew I wanted to be closer to the client. And at that time, I was doing retail tech. So I moved into a company called Rakuten. So Rakuten is kind of the Amazon of Japan. It's a marketplace, but they expanded into so many different businesses. You have Rakuten Mobile, Rakuten Card, Rakuten Bank, Rakuten Travel, Rakuten everything. So people in Japan make their life around this company. They create an account and they have all the services through there. My job was I was working in the conversational AI department. So I was in the team that we were providing all the chatbots that each of the verticals will be using facing the clients, and mostly customer service chatbots. Some marketing ones like pre-sales one, but mostly all customer service. So I got into the customer service conversational AI kind of space, and I loved it. That was for 5 years. It was before Gen AI started, so that was great to see the before and after, all the transition. And after 4 years there, after I learned a lot about conversational AI, I'm like, okay, I want to be closer to the business side instead of so much the IT side. Then I moved to Uber, and now I'm leading the part of the customer experience for the whole Japan market. And I focus on improving the experience of the delivery partners as much as possible.
Fantastic. That's really good.
So far, that's the experience.
Good. That's great. I mean, that's a hell of a journey you've been on there. Lots of sort of traveling, lots of seeing different parts of the world, different cultures, and all that kind of stuff. Experiencing conversational AI pre kind of LLMs, which is always useful to see where it's come from and get that kind of really grounded kind of experience. The thing that is interesting, we alluded to it in the beginning there, is this concept of Omotenashi. So being in Japan for 12 years, obviously you've gotten very familiar with the culture, working for Japanese companies. It's not just, living there and being a part of the culture, you're actually working there as well. So you are fully immersed in the culture. So what is Omotenashi? Can you explain?
Omotenashi is a Japanese philosophy of putting the customer first, but in a way that we anticipate what they need, we feel what they need, we apologize sincerely when needed, and we solve the problem when needed at the right time. So it's not different from what other culture might do in customer service, but Japanese really take it to the heart. And to give you a couple of examples that I have never seen other place in the world, and you might right away think, okay, that's Omotenashi. I used to do an internship in a supermarket. I was working as a staff in the supermarket as part of my first role because we were providing retail tech solutions to supermarkets in Japan. So in Tokyo, I worked for some weeks at a supermarket. And one of the training was that part of the training, and that you could see this in every supermarket every day if you go, the staff, when they go in and out of the inside room with the warehouse of the supermarket where they have inventory and everything, they always bow to the supermarket. They go inside the room, and before leaving, they bow to the supermarket. Sometimes no one is looking at them. They know no one is looking, but they do it. And they do it every time they enter and they leave. Or when you see staff in the Shinkansen, which is the train, the speed train, the staff, when they are cleaning, when they go from one car to another car, they bow to the car. So these kind of small moments that no one is looking at them, but they do it. That's Omotenashi. That's a way to say, okay, this market is doing something different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that goes beyond kind of like if you look at things like, for example, with airlines, and if you're performing kind of like safety checks with airlines, one of the things is that this goes for whenever you're doing anything routine, and I'm sure it's the same for other businesses, but you essentially have to speak out loud the checks that you're doing. And essentially what it means is even though you know them back to front, inside out, you know exactly what they are, you still have to verbalize them out loud every single time. And it just makes sure that you are absolutely doing it and you are not at any risk whatsoever of making any mistake. You verbalize it every time. That for me is kind of like a drilled, trained, you've got to do it. It's not necessarily cultural, it's institutional. This is what you have to do. But what you're explaining there seems to me to go one level deeper than that, which is not do it because you've been told to. It's do it seemingly out of a deep respect for the people that you're there to serve. Would you say that? Is this a training thing, or is this one level deeper than that?
I think it's both. It's on the training, but it's also internal for many Japanese people. They they see that every day. So they just repeat it and it just becomes part of the culture. And now that you're saying the airlines, Japan Airlines, for example, one of their marketing campaigns is Omotenashi. If you go to Google, you type Japan Airlines Omotenashi, you will see it. They use it as a way. It's even a marketing thing. They know that's something they offer. And they put it in a package and say, hey, we offer this level of customer service to you.
Interesting. Where would you say that that differs from a company in the Western world that claims to be customer centric?
I will say, like, one of the most explicit things that I've seen in customer service, particularly, is in Japan. Uh, there is a lot of emphasis and weight into how we apologize to the client before we even start solving it or understanding what's the issue. Like, that apology is incredibly important. And there are studies who say that Japanese customers value more an apology, a sincere apology, rather than money back because of the product was not the right one or was broken. They prefer the apology first. I haven't seen that in the West. That someone who say, "I want the apology first, and then we will solve it." Japanese, generally speaking, they will value a lot a sincere apology first, and not only in customer service, at company as well. Like you make a mistake, I was see in the West maybe trying to not excuse it, but in some way it was not 100% my fault. This kind of approach in Japan, that's a big no. In Japan, would be like, hey, this is mine. I'm very sorry for that. Then everyone accepts that. Okay, this person is apologizing. Now we're on the same on the same base.
Yeah.
Now let's solve it. I think apology will be one area that is very different from the West.
That's interesting. I read somewhere that kind of like Japanese and Chinese cultures, although there's likely to be lots of differences between them, but I think the one thing that the kind of East shares, and correct me if I'm wrong because this is obviously just secondhand knowledge, but it's this idea of the individual is subservient to the group. Whereas in the West, the individual is a law unto themselves. So like that thing you were saying there in terms of like the insincere apology that you sometimes get in the West is, I'm sorry you feel that way, which is not really taking ownership over the apology and recognizing what's gone wrong and telling the person how you're going to fix it and how it's never going to happen again. You're almost you're sorry that they feel that way, not because of what you've done. So I don't know if that's something to do with it in terms of like the subservient nature to the community, whereas in the West it's all kind of ego and individualistic.
That is right. That is right. And one thing I want to say is that I'm not advocating for Japan to have the answer that the West hasn't found yet. Definitely not. Many things that the way Japan do things, I don't exactly agree with it, but I think we both can learn, and that's the interesting part of maybe this podcast will be, what can we learn from that, from the West, and what Japanese can learn from how we do it. Right, this individualistic approach has also very good things. So the best thing will be to find a place in the middle, right? But that's more complex than it sounds.
Yeah. That's interesting. So how then, in terms of your work in conversational AI, you've been, working in this space for a long time over there. How does the concept of Omotenashi translate into kind of like a conversational AI application?
Yeah. So before going into that one, a couple of things about what makes Japan a very different market is also the expectations on customer service. There are, like, if you see, there are some graphs comparing Japan with other markets, like, for example, if you say Brazil or India or Australia, there are markets that NPS, as the average NPS across industries, it's much higher than Japan. Japan is one of the countries with the lowest average NPS across industries. And if you compare, for example, the same restaurant in Japan, if you see the reviews on a Japanese application or in Google Maps, you will see a big difference. Google Maps usually is rated by foreigners, and Japanese application, mostly 98% are Japanese people rating it. The same restaurant, it will have most likely a lower rate in the Japanese application. So the expectation very different. So when we talk about conversational AI, it's also different. And there are different areas in which we can look at um, to see the differences. And the first one is the apology one, what we were talking before. Think about it in conversational AI when a user goes to a chatbot and say, "Hey, I have a problem." Um, Before Gen AI, we only had a fixed way to set up the answer, and that was the apology. So the apology probably will be the same for all. Maybe in the West that could work. In Japan, not so much, in the sense that a different kind of apology will be needed. And in the Japanese language, there are like 10 to 15 ways of saying sorry, from more formal to less formal. So which one you choose, right? And the answer is not always the highest one. Sometimes it's the middle one. Sometimes you can be a little bit informal. So now with Gen AI, you can create prompts and say, "Hey, for this kind of issue with the client, for this kind of contact type, please apologize with this kind of level. But for this one, please be a bit more informal and do it this way."
What would
And
an example be of like a formal versus informal requirement?
yeah, so for example, in Japanese, if let's say that is if it's a situation in which um, the product is broken, right? Is something that is very important for the client. Maybe we will say to be a bit more formal in the apology. But
Right.
if the situation is not as bad as that, and if it's a small thing, maybe we don't want to make a big deal of that. Because the moment you select a high, kind of very formal way to apologize, you are also giving the image that, hey, we understand this is huge.
Right.
So you don't want that also. You want also to tell to the user, hey, we both understand this is not so much.
Right. Right. Sorry. Yeah, I cut you off there. Sorry. Carry on.
No. That's all. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
different situations will require different way of apologizing.
Yeah. That's interesting. So at what point does the apology? Because obviously, conversational AI is ultimately programmatic. Generative AI allows you the probabilistic and more kind of like I suppose natural way of doing it. How does the Japanese kind of like customer base take those interactions? Because it's a bit like in the NLU days. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. The apology is completely negated. No one even looks at the fact that the thing said sorry. It's just it didn't understand. And the apology doesn't really mean anything. It's just part of being polite, I suppose. And I think that in the West, the user would look at that and they would think, "Oh, that thing's not sorry. He hasn't got a clue what it's doing." And they would just completely negate the fact that it's apologizing. How does the Japanese market feel about these kind of, in some way, simulated apologies?
Well, we need to understand that in Japan, it's not that they are from other world, right? They're humans and they understand they are dealing with a chatbot at the end of the day. And if the chatbot is just not understanding it, they understand that, right? The situation is not like they will be expecting like a huge level of apology. And if it's not working and giving me the same, what they really value and they really want is an escalation to a human. This is a market that is driven by like personal relationships are very important. So I need to find if there is a study about this or not, but my general feeling is that usually people prefer talking to a human as much as possible. If they can make a call, they prefer to do it, generally speaking. So having that escalation to human definitely must in this market. Maybe in other markets, I'm not sure, could be okay if you repeat the same, "Hey, we cannot solve this," and then send the user through another path. But in Japan, this is true. There are studies that 56% of customers say that after one bad interaction with a brand, they will not go back
Right.
and buy from that brand. So this is again this kind of high expectation from client that the customer service should be good.
Right. Does that mean that also then might change your escalation strategies as well then? So, in the NLU days, it was typically if you don't understand someone once, try again. If you don't understand them twice, try again. If you don't understand them 3 times, offer an agent. In generative AI, you kind of still have the similar kind of thing, although it happens a bit less because generative AI understands a bit better. Does it change in Japan then? Do you try and pull the ripcord earlier and get them through to an agent if something happens quicker or not?
Well, hard to answer that, Kane, because I don't know in other maybe parts of the world what is the standard or the average times that someone will try to interact with a chatbot and then be escalated. What I know is that that's definitely a topic that when we are designing a chatbot, it is a must to have there. And what it could be, and this I don't have an answer for this, it could be that in Japan it's a bit faster than in other markets.
Mm.
But I will need to see the data and see what other markets are doing in that sense. I'm not sure.
Of course, yeah. What are there any other ways then that the concept of Omotenashi kind of makes its way into either the interface or either your planning methodology or design process or anything like that?
Yeah, so one of the values of Omotenashi is anticipation, is to anticipate what the client needs. So if we bring this to conversational AI, and this is not exactly conversational AI, but it's more a principle when designing solutions, is try to identify what are the problems, that the potential problems that might come for the client, and then send them a reminder. Maybe it can be through a chatbot or through a notification as soon as possible. So they will know that, hey, this is coming, or this is not working, or this order was not finished, and then they send you a reminder. So anticipation, that's probably one value that from Omotenashi that everyone knows here, that could be definitely conversational AI will benefit a lot. So when designing the systems, maybe thinking on how can we anticipate for each of the contact types that we have, how can we anticipate it? If we can anticipate it, then we can't. But if there is a way that we can get some signal in the system, then how can we do that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that that's a good design principle regardless, but I think that even though there's a lot of things that are spoke about along these lines, such as prevent the issue from happening before it happens, or if an issue does happen, solve it before the customer realizes, or there's a progression, isn't there? And that gets spoke about a lot, but you don't see it manifest often because people are too concerned about fixing the interaction. So I think that that whole anticipatory sort of lens, I don't think it's necessarily that the West don't understand it. I think it's probably that they don't really prioritize it because they're too busy focused on something else. But it sounds as though it's more important in the East.
Yes, and by this, I'm not saying that all Japanese companies are doing this and they're perfect by doing this. Definitely not. It's just that it's a value that is pretty much understood by everyone here. So maybe it's in the mind of more people. Not necessarily that you will find all the Japanese companies anticipating to the client needs. That will be a perfect world. That is definitely not like that.
Yeah. When we spoke last, you were also there was a really interesting thing that you mentioned, which is around language and how obviously they speak a different language in Japan other than English, but it was the concept of sort of being sort of direct versus indirect and not actually saying no and directly refusing things and stuff like that. I don't know if that's considered Omotenashi or if that's something different, but I wonder if you can talk around maybe some of the nuances in language and how that affects the conversational AI components.
Yeah. So two things. What you're talking about when Japanese don't express explicitly, particularly the negative side, when they want to say no, is very hard. There is no way, you can say no directly, but that will be very offensive in many ways. So there is not a direct no, but there is many ways to say it. And this connects with one concept called Aimai, which is kind of ambiguity. So because Japanese don't like to say things directly, they play a lot with ambiguity. And when I say they, I say me for the last 12 years. Like now, when I go back to Europe, I'm never too direct because it's hard for me to say also to people, hey, that's not right. I don't think that's right. I cannot say it now. It's very hard. So we play with ambiguity a lot. And the concept is called Aimai. And this is done to maintain the harmony. So if you look at the conversational AI, how this is done, so since Japanese people and any foreigner that has been living here a long time, I don't want to say Japanese people, I would say anyone that has been living in this culture for long enough. When you are talking with a chatbot, for example, maybe not everyone will be very direct and say, this is my problem and I'm not happy about it. Maybe they will use some words like in Japanese, chotto. Chotto is like a little bit. So chotto could be one. Demo is kind of yes, but some kind of very softly saying yeah, but no, or I'm not so happy about this. But it's not I'm not happy, So for a Gen AI, for example, to identify that this customer is not happy, it's not enough to say, hey, tell me when they are saying that they are not happy with this, because they might be using some expressions that you need to catch. So maybe telling the Gen AI with a prompt like, hey, if the user say any of this list of expressions that is not exactly a no, but could be, most likely that's on the negative side for the sentiment analysis, for example. So ambiguity, that will be a way that it's part of Omotenashi in the sense that it respects the feelings of the other person, of the client, or of the receiving part, basically. So because they are not direct, you need to identify what is exactly the feeling of this customer right now. Is angry or not? With us, I would say with people in the West will be easier to identify in many ways.
Yeah.
But here, you're not very sure if that person is happy or not.
And is that the case even when you're talking to somebody in person, or is that more around when all you're left with is language?
Both in person as well. Particularly when I arrived to Japan, many times I will go with a feeling out of a dialogue with someone, an interaction, with the feeling that, oh, good, I think that person is happy with me or with this idea. And definitely not. Then I realized that, oh no, what happened? Why I had that image? And it happens at work a lot. You explain an idea, a project, initiative, and it's hard to understand if it's being accepted or not. So yeah, definitely, you can see that also when you're talking.
Interesting. That is interesting. I think I would find that quite challenging, to be honest. How are the models then over there in terms of the large language models and generative AI? Obviously, they're trained on huge amounts of data. Are they any good at picking up this kind of ambiguity or not?
So that's what we are exploring now, right? Now in my previous company that we were starting to use Gen AI, so that was one of the things that we were starting to explore. So, but that was last year. So I will say that it's still being tested. There's no one model that I will say, yeah, this model is the one that definitely got it. But I will say the prompts that you ingest explaining this situation and say, hey, which one are the expressions that we want to catch? That's probably very important, more than the model itself right now.
Interesting.
So understanding what is the instruction that you want to give.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, you don't have to tell us in terms of specific stuff going on at either Uber or Rakuten, but just generally in Japan, what is the landscape like in terms of sort of models and stuff like that? Because obviously in the West, all you hear about is Anthropic, Cohere, Gemini, OpenAI, all that kind of stuff. You hear about things that make it over the fence, like DeepSeek and stuff like that, but it's very difficult to really understand what the lay of the land is over in kind of China and Japan. I wonder if you can share a little bit about the general AI activity over there and what your experience is and what models are out there and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but very generally speaking, so in Japan, there is no like a Japanese LLM, let's say like DeepSeek. Like in China, they have DeepSeek. We don't have like the DeepSeek of Japan, so to speak. So we don't have that. So we in Japan we leverage like all the LLMs that the ones you just mentioned. So there is no yet a kind of a Japanese LLM that people use here. There is one company doing very interesting things called Sakana AI. I don't know if you have heard.
I heard
Sakana
actually,
means
Sakana,
fish, and Sakana AI is it's a startup. And what the project they have, it's quite interesting. They're doing a lot of research on how LLMs can train themselves alone, like that not needing humans. This is like a huge summary of that. Like definitely they're doing a lot of things, not only that. So there are some startups working with LLMs and doing very great things in the market. But in terms of what a corporate, for example, is using, what I have seen so far, it's the general LLMs that you can see also in the West.
Yeah.
Not a special like Japanese LLM so far.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's say that there is a company that is looking to, expand, or maybe there's already. I mean, there's lots of companies that exist globally that have a presence in Japan. So let's say that one of those companies wants to take the work that they've been doing with AI agents and conversational AI, and they want to kind of spin up something in Japan. What's the best way for them to do that? Like, I'm assuming based on this conversation, they can't just lift and shift and that's that. Like, what's the best way for someone to create a really great AI-based service for the Japanese market?
I'll focus on customer service because that's the area that I know the most. And if we are talking about conversational AI, so there are different areas that a company in the West should look at. The first thing is that, as we mentioned before, this is a different game compared to other countries in the sense that the expectations are just higher. So if the metrics that you're looking after are very low at the beginning or are very far from the ones you're used to, I would say that's okay in the sense that that gap is expected. But let's say a company wants to expand to the Japanese market. It's already here, but they want to add conversational AI. They want to implement a chatbot, or they want to, work in the contact center with human chat solutions or with IVRs. Linguistic etiquette, that's the first thing they should look at, right? The way of apologizing is one, but that's just one. In Japan, if the first area, if we look at linguistic etiquette, the first one, a part of apologizing will be how we write in Japan. There are 3 alphabets: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So 3 ways of that when you write, they are like one word might have katakana and hiragana, which are 2 different ways of writing, and will include maybe some kanji, which is like the more complex symbols. So they mix them, and then the way you mix them is very important. Sometimes one word can be written by 2 kanjis or by 1 kanji and some hiragana, and the sound is the same, but the way you write it is different. So it's a small example, but you want consistency. If you are talking with a chatbot and the chatbot gives you 1 word with 2 kanjis, but right after the second line, it gives you the same word with 1 kanji and hiragana, is inconsistent. And from a Japanese point of view, they will see it right away. Me, being a foreigner, I know Japanese, but I might not be as susceptible for that. But a Japanese person will really catch it.
Interesting.
That's one thing.
Does that mean that, I mean, do the LLMs get that right? Is that something you need to prompt them to do? Do you need to make a conscious decision about how you construct the way that you write and stuff like that? How does that work?
Should be prompted. I haven't tested too much if an LLM will catch that inconsistency, but best practice prompted. Just put
Right.
it on the prompt, like, hey, when you see these things, be consistent. Just one prompt and it should catch it.
Mm.
That's one thing. And also because we use symbols, kanjis, hiragana, katakana, that occupies space as well. And because it's more in the space, it's more demanding visually to make a story of it. When we read words, maybe for us it's easier, but symbols, it requires a little bit more of effort maybe to get it. So one best practice is to keep it to 50 characters, no more than 50 characters per message.
Mm.
So it doesn't look like very dense.
Yeah.
So that will be one area, the linguistic etiquette. Another one will be, and this one I like it a lot, is the digital personification. In Japan, it's not strange to see companies, prefectures in the country, organizations using mascots for everything. So you will see that, for example, there is a map of Japan that you can see that what is the mascot that each prefecture uses. So when you go to the station of that prefecture, of the capital city, you will see the mascot everywhere, like telling you how to cross the streets or announcing some tourism stuff. Or football teams, baseball teams, they all have their own mascot. So I have seen many chatbots that they use their mascot.
Right.
And they give it a name. So personification of that conversational AI particularly when it's customer facing and is facing the masses, no, it's not B2B, it's B2C. That could be something to explore for a company.
That's interesting.
It will be probably more welcome in this market than in other markets.
Yeah, that's interesting because I suppose in the West, I mean, they all give it a name, like, you know, this is Alyssa, our AI agent or whatever, but it's never really properly personified. It's like a generic picture if they use one. I think Domino's, I think, is the only one who I've seen that really, or Toby from Vodafone, are the only ones that really dial it in. Like, but I think I quite like that, to be fair. Like, the idea of creating a very specific person or mascot and then, you know, embodying the character in all of the conversations. I actually quite like that idea.
It's cool. It's cool. I love it. I love it. I got used to that here, and it's a great culture to have. I like it. So that would be another area, and then integrations with local tools. In Europe, for example, WhatsApp probably is one of the main communication tools, but in Japan we use a lot Line, which is the equivalent of WhatsApp. But I will say it's just better. And why it's better is because from a company perspective, you can do so many things in Line. You can open a about me kind of page with information about a restaurant or a store. You can put there information about the schedule of your store. You can put like a link to communicate with the store. And Line will provide also a chatbot that you can communicate with the client through that Line account. And because everyone have Line, same as everyone have WhatsApp, definitely that's a communication channel you want to be in. If you're implementing a chatbot, it should be integrated with Line for sure. That will be a must. So there are different areas that someone should look at if they're expanding, like these ones. There are more. I'm just talking about like some main ones that are coming to my mind right now.
Yeah. That's it. That's cool. Yeah, it's crazy how kind of I suppose what is it like? What is it? Is it? I think it might be not Japan necessarily, but I mean over that way, you know, China as well, especially. They all have these kind of super apps, don't they? Where kind of like everything happens. Yes. It sounds as though Rakuten might be one of them type of companies that's on the way to doing something like that. Whereas in the West, everything seems to be a lot more fragmented. You know, there's an app for this and an app for that and an app for the other. And, you know, even though WhatsApp is heavily adopted, for some reason, it's not really, I mean, lots of businesses do use it, but it's nowhere near like a destination for businesses, weirdly enough. I'm not really sure why that is, but it seems to be kind of like, yeah, everything seems a little bit more siloed and segmented in the West.
Yeah. And particularly talking about these kind of super apps, I think China probably is the one is the lead of this right now.
Yeah.
China and in Indonesia, I think they have one app called was Orc or Grok. I need to find it, but Indonesia also have one super app,
Mm,
and China has another. I mean, I think WeChat is
yeah,
definitely one that you can do almost everything there now.
that's the one.
Um,
I'm looking for the Indonesia one. It doesn't tell me.
Gojek.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's mad. Yeah, so that's good. I love the mascot thing. I think the mascot thing is really good. I think the language component seems to me to be the most tricky. But that's the same as well for any other application, isn't it? I suppose, especially for example, if you move
Yeah.
into like voice, the language that you use in a voice interface, even though Gen AI can generate language pretty well, it still
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
sound really weird on a voice user interface if it doesn't get the combination of words right, the pronunciation, the cadence. Like, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong if you don't get that kind of stuff right, isn't there?
Exactly. That's why when designing the conversational AI, the dialogues, the responses, having these kind of prompts, telling, "Hey, this is going to the conversation might go in this direction, or the user might say this kind of words, but when they say this, they might want to say this other thing." But let me make one clarification. When we say that Japanese don't know how to say no, that's not true. They know how to say no very well. We just don't understand it. But they are saying no sometimes very clearly, and sometimes I feel like a kid that I don't get it because it's just obvious.
Yeah.
But for them, they are telling you no. You just don't know enough about the culture to really get that that's a no. If
Yeah.
someone say this is a very simple example, but when you say, "Hey, what about this idea? Shall we do it?" And they're like, "Let me consider." Kentoshimas. Let me consider. That's very close to a no.
Yeah.
And if you have been living here long enough and based on the situation and the specifics of that moment, most likely it's a no.
Mm.
But for that, you need to be living here long enough to really get that clues and say, okay, that's a no. I don't need to continue asking later after 2 days. Hey, you say you were considering. Is that a yes or a no? You know at that moment. So it was a no. Actually, it was a no.
That's interesting.
You just didn't know that
That's
it was a
interesting.
no.
I suppose when I think about it, if I, the typical kind of like parental saying is "we'll see." Oh, can I go? Can I go? Can we go to the park later? Oh, we'll see. Oh, can I have a lolly after tea? Oh, we'll see about that. That seems it's probably fairly similar, but I suppose over here when someone says "we'll see," it's not
Yeah.
strictly a no, because later
Yeah.
on you will say, "Well, what about that ice cream?" And maybe you will, maybe you won't. It's not a definitive no, but it strikes me
Yeah.
as it might be a similar type of thing in the moment, which is more often than not, it's probably a no.
Yeah. It's similar to that. It's similar to that. Yeah. And
Probably,
and and also Japan is changing. Is and depending on the context, if you're in a corporate like the work I'm doing, you don't see that too often. If you talk with someone, "Hey, shall we do this project?" They will tell you, "Hey, that's a bad idea," very clearly. They will not play like this ambiguity. Maybe that was more before, but it's still in this area. You can see it, but it's maybe not as explicit as before.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. That's mad. That's crazy. Wicked. Well, Daniel, appreciate your time. This has been really, really, really interesting stuff. I'm sure that if anyone out there is looking at getting themselves up and running in the Japanese market, or maybe even interested in even visiting or going and moving over there or anything like that, or redeploying conversational AI in that market, this has been really interesting, and also lots that you can learn even if that's not the case. I think the whole concept of I keep looking at the name because I keep forgetting it. Onotomashi, isn't it? The whole concept of Onotomashi is it's Omotenashi.
Yes.
Omotenashi, yeah. The whole concept of that I think is brilliant, and I think that if that's the kind of ethos that you take into your kind of projects, and it's not customer first for the sake of customer first, it's a deep, real caring about the customer and their needs and the experience, and that's kind of a good guiding principle, isn't it?
I think so. And what we can learn from that is that it just raised the bar. I think this principle of Omotenashi from Japan, it helps the world raise the bar for customer service. Just making everyone more accountable, more sincere, apologize, and of course solve the issue. Like that's a given. In Japanese, we say "atarimai." That of course that should always be the case, right? We solve it. But what about before? Can we empathize with the client? Can we take one moment to say, "Hey, I'm sorry for that. I understand your pain right now, and now we're gonna solve it." I love that. I really like it.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, for joining us. Where can people reach out to you, connect with you, if they wanted to do so after?
Yeah, so I have my LinkedIn, Daniel Orenes Ferrández, and I also write a newsletter. It's called CX Japan, simple title, in Substack, where I write about this. I write about Omotenashi. I write about conversational AI. What can we learn from Japan in this sense to improve customer service?
Brilliant. Well, get subscribed to that if you're not already. We'll put the links in the show notes here. And yeah, it's been really good. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll see you again, hopefully, in either in Edinburgh, or if there's any interesting AI events in Japan that you know of, then let me know.
I'll let you know. There are some interesting ones in Asia, based in Singapore, in Japan. I need to look at it, but I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I'm also writing a book about this, so when I have a copy, I'll send it to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be great. Fantastic. Wicked. Thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you again on the next one. Thanks now. Bye.